You're listening to the Ones Ready podcast, a team of Air Force Special Operators forged in combat with over 70 years of combined operational experience as well as a decade of selection instructor experience. If you're tired of settling and you want to do something you truly believe in, you're in the right place. Now here's your host, PJ team leader, jiu-jitsu lover, meme enthusiast, and dad joke aficionado, Aaron Love.
All right, hey everybody, what's up? As promised, in the addition to the Cross Training podcast, we decided to get Master Sergeant Gann on here. He is the subject matter expert on the officer program and the enlisted force retraining program. Like, he is the SME that we're going to sit down and talk with today. So I'm not going to overtalk him. He's going to tell you who he is and what he's here to talk about. So, man, take it away, Donovan.
Hey, all right. Yes, I'm Donovan, Master Sergeant Gann. I work for the Air Force at Herbert Field. I work mainly in the recruiting assessment selection section at Herbert Field, and also for the 330th Recruiting Squadron. I handle all the prior service and officer programs for any civilians for prior service want to come over to be crows, stows, or TAC-P officers now. And I've been doing that for just over 2 years. It was a brand new program that was stood up for the officers, and it seems to be going pretty well. And we're growing with every assessment. Our numbers keep increasing.
Man, that's awesome. That's really good to hear. You know, as you well know, like, man, we need the right candidate to get in these programs and to be successful. So we talked a lot on the podcast yesterday, kind of from the operator's perspective, right? Where we're like, hey, here's what you would need to do to be successful. From your side of the fence, man, can you tell us, like, the very beginning process, right? Like, let's say somebody wants to cross train in the Air Force. What are the very first steps that they need to do to start that process? Yeah,
the first steps I would tell them to do is either get on, my purse and apply for the retraining. I have some slides I can send you also if y'all want to post them somewhere that it show them how to go through and retrain through AFPC. A lot of people are going to have issues because if there's not any slots available, through my purse, it's going to kick back their application. Okay. That's not really the end all be all for them. They can either email me directly, and I'll provide my email address, or our distro that they can email and kind of get out there, and we can send packages straight to the CFMs and let them know, hey, this is a guy I want to cross train. Can we create a spot for him? So we're a little fluid that way, where if they get a no right off the bat through the retraining process itself, then we can kind of, I won't say work behind the scenes, but kind of work behind the scenes to try to make sure we're getting the right guys down there.
Okay. Yeah, that's awesome, because we do get DMs, not frequently, but enough like that people are like, hey, I went on there and I tried to sign up, but there weren't any spots. Mm-hmm. What am I supposed to do? It was one of those things that we were just like, I don't know, hit the recruiter button, man,
Yeah. And a lot of the guys in the 330th Recruiting Squadron, that they can help a little bit. And I get a lot of questions from those guys, especially ones that are around a base and have guys wanting to retrain. So a lot of that stuff gets filtered down to my level or up to my level. And then, I kind of go from there and start working directly with either the section I work in, or I'll reach out to CFMs directly and kind of see what they need to get these guys going.
Okay. Yeah. And then from the officer side, how does that work?
The officer side is a little bit different. So I mainly deal with civilians straight off the street, non-prior military, who want to come in to be a stow, crow, TAC-P officer. Mm-hmm. And there's a phase 1, phase 2 process with those guys as well. And we send them the application. We get them linked up with a local 330th recruiter, get them out there for a development session so T3I can check them out. And we just have they send their applications to me. I QC them and get them ready for the board.
Okay. Awesome. And then that's the phase 1 process that we were talking yesterday. Can you kind of go into that a little bit? Because we were talking about it yesterday, but again, like wave top, knuckle dragger sort of stuff. Right. Like, so, hey, there's a packet. Yeah.
So there's an application you can get for stow and crow on the Air Force Special Tactics website. Mm-hmm. You can download it straight from there. I can send you the application too. And TAC-P officer has a separate application. Okay. Stow and crow. There are two phase 1 boards a year. One meets mid-August and one meets mid-January. So we're coming up on our spring board for stow and crow. So those guys I'll start QCing packages when I get back from the holidays and getting ready for that. For the TAC-P officers, we have one pretty much every quarter. So we just wrapped up one for TAC-P officer, and the next one I believe is in March. Is when their next cutoff will be. So the packet itself will entail transcripts, make sure the AFOQT is taken, just basic officer stuff you're going to need to qualify to be an officer in the Air Force. And then the physical fitness assessment is basically the AFSOC PT test to take and exceed on that. We use the matrix, to grade each of the categories. And then from there, we board it. And if they get picked up, If a person's picked up to come to phase 2, usually within 2 weeks, we have that recruiter get them squared away to be enlisted in the Air Force. That's the unique thing about this process with civilians is we sponsor them as E3s through the phase 2 process. That just kind of takes the liability off our shoulders too. Should something, they get hurt, pull a muscle and need med care, and so they're card carrying E3s.
That's a new thing, right? Is allowing civilians to come in and attempt the phase 1, phase 2 process and it's no harm, no foul. It's not like they show up and if they fail, they're like, oh, you're enlisted now. No,
exactly. They actually sign a memorandum that gives them all their options. So if somebody who doesn't make it through, whether they be hurt or they SIE or whatever the case may be, we can discharge them, no harm, no foul. It's not going to damn them if they want to come in enlisted later or commission for another board later. So that the ball is really kind of in their court. Of course, the overall outcome is to make them, stows, crows, Type B officers. And we're seeing more success with each board that passes and in each phase 2 assessment that it passes too.
Yeah, and I imagine as that word gets out, like that's a really cool program, at least from mine, is let civilians that think that they might want to do this, but they've really got no real sensitization or I guess no real experience. Let them come in and try it, because that's how we're going to find those diamonds in the rough. Like we are going to find some good officers out of there. I would bet. So that's awesome.
A lot of people think, that, they got to be a certain type of major or whatever. I mean, the first guy we picked up to be a stow had a finance degree.
Wow.
We've had engineers picked up, we've had exercise science guys come in and, make it. So there's been no like mold of the type of degree or anything we're looking for. It's just that those intangibles, that we want to see when they come out there for phase 2.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's the same on the enlisted side, right? So on the enlisted side, that phase 1, phase 2 packet, can you kind of talk through the same exact stuff, right? So what the packet specifically, getting that phase 1 packet together, what are some tips or some tricks, and then some things that you see that people do wrong when they get that packet together?
Things I've seen wrong are basically when they're writing their personal narrative while they want to do it. I've seen some that are very egocentric, where they're all about themselves, and you can tell they're just trying to. It's not about the team, it seems to be more about them, so, and that's definitely not something they're looking for. They want to see that person must be good on team, and there's ways to find that out for those people who try to, I won't say game the system, but the things that happen during phase 2s, we have a good way of figuring out this is the right person we want, whether it be officer or a cross training.
Yeah. And that's a great transition too, because we talked pretty heavily on the phase 2 process yesterday. Can you kind of tell us what that looks like? So phase 2 for officers and enlisted, exactly the same or modeled, really closely to the same.
Right.
Can you kind of go through the phase 2 and what that entails for the officers and the enlisted?
Yeah. So basically it's going to be a week-long assessment. You're looking really anywhere from 4 to 5 days of mental and physical stress. There's water confidence involved, if that's what you're looking for. I mean, they're going to have pool sessions. They're going to have physical events. They're going to have, leadership drills and exercises for them to put them in a place of, you're going to put them in a leadership position to see how they react. And they're going to put different stressors on them to make sure they can overcome it and run a team, when under that stress.
Yeah, absolutely. And people kind of gloss over that a little bit, but some of the mental challenges involved in phase 2 are stout. Like you have to get it, so I've worked both the Crow and the pararescue enlisted cross training assessments. I work a pretty good number of the enlisted ones, but one of the hardest events for these guys were like, hey, we want you to write a point paper tonight. Like go back to your dorm room and write a paper, or tomorrow you're going to brief a mission. You're going to stand up in front of all of us and you're going to brief this mission kind of, ad hoc or an impromptu sort of thing. And man, that trips people up a lot. Like,
that's something that they've started to include more of, and it's really interesting to see how they react when they have to do something totally out of what they're not expecting. I mean, if they have to write a point paper on whatever the case may be, a prior mission and brief on it, and then they've been through a lot of mental and physical stress, a day or two prior, and with minimal sleep, possibly. Just to see how they react to that. It's sometimes it's entertaining to watch, but it's also sometimes pretty impressive to see how some of these guys react to that stress.
It can definitely be painful. There have definitely been times where I'm sitting on that board and you're watching a guy struggle through it because, sometimes it's preparation, but sometimes it's just you have no experience. But that's honestly what we wanted to see as instructors. Is I wanted to see, hey, you've never done this before, and we threw you a curveball. Like, how are you going to handle that? We have to really evaluate somebody holistically.
Yeah, and we kind of sort of adopted that more here at Herbert Field when we integrated the stows and the crows and the PJs in with the ST retraining assessment. So that's something that we've kind of gleaned from you guys and incorporated, and it seemed to work out pretty well.
Yeah, and speaking about that whole combined assessment, so is the idea here to get everybody together at the same assessment at Hurlburt, so crow, stow, PJ, and combat controller all at once?
I don't think they're going to include the enlisted with the officers. I know with the last officer assessment we had, we included some ST TAC-P officers that wanted to come in. We only had a few, so we integrated them into the stow crow assessment, and it worked out pretty well. We had them doing, some cast stuff when there was pool stuff going on. So that worked out well, but I haven't heard much talk about integrating the enlisted with the officers just yet.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah. And I know they just combined, and it was just recently that they combined the crow and the stow together. So that's awesome. Again, we're all looking for the same things, especially from the officer side and the enlisted side too. I can see it moving that way. So man, that's great. It's a good thing.
Yeah. And something else, I don't know, we've also had an influx of more female applicants applying too. So we had, so far we've had one female crow picked up. We have a female stow in the pipeline right now, and we just got she's a civilian coming in. We had a TAC-P officer accepted to phase 2. So she'll be going off for phase 2 in March or into February. So
good.
Curious to see how that works.
Yeah, I can't wait to see it either. I assume people ask you. People are asking me all the time, "Hey, when's the first female going to get in?" It's the same answer as every time. Like, I don't care, man. I want everybody to see. I want every candidate that makes the standard to succeed, and I want them to be given an equal opportunity to succeed. That's all I care about. Right. So yeah. I'm glad that they got picked up. I'm glad that it's getting more sensitized, because to be honest with you, I just want to move on. Like, if they're on team, they're on team. I don't care.
Yeah, exactly.
We spend a lot of time talking about it because people.
Yeah, we get a lot of questions, but like I say, your reaction is the same way everybody else is down here. We don't look at it in any kind of special situation. Good on them, though.
Yeah, I mean, I can't. But you like. Listen, we fail 91% of the people that try this thing, period. Like it is hard to put your ego and to put your life and your career on the line to do that. So just like anybody else, man, good on them. I hope they succeed. So yeah, definitely a good one there. Let's kind of talk about, we do get questions all the time. People will start this process and they'll get a no, just like we talked about earlier with the my purse stops or spots, excuse me. Can you tell us some times where people should just take the no and that's it? That's the end of the process. And then some other times, like the my purse thing, that you get a no, but it's not really a no. It's, hey, you need to frame this better. Or you need to find a way around it.
Usually when the hard no's come, it's usually something in their package that's very blaring. I can't really give you a specific instance because every situation's unique. Some of them may submit a past test is right on the bubble, and they're like, no, this ain't gonna work. And we would maybe encourage them to go back and get some more conditioning, get some more training, to increase their scores. Those kind of people, sometimes you hear back from them, sometimes you don't hear anything at all because they don't have the internal fortitude, I guess, to do that. I've seen some people before on the officer side, specifically that their statement was just not what it should have been, and you can tell their grammar, their education wasn't where it needed to be. Their test scores weren't well. And some of those things you're not going to improve that much to make yourself much more competitive. Sometimes it is what it is. Right. In other times, we've had people reapply that have tried to apply for, let's say somebody comes through the PJ retraining assessment, didn't make it, then they try to go to another career field, say TAC-P, for instance. Those people still talk, there's the community is very small. So and part of the application is asking, have you applied another assessment before? Have you applied, for X, Y, or Z before? And if that answer is yes, we're going to go back and see how you tested or see how you did this or did that. Because, if they want to get in, great, but we want to make sure they're doing it for the right reasons and they still have the right attributes. Sure. So those are the hard no. Sometimes we look at a package and be like, no. Just period. Yeah. It could be for whatever reason, you just aren't cut out for this or whatever,
Yeah. And I can imagine that's a hard thing to swallow, but we are looking for very specific things and very specific personality traits. And especially when you kind of go down the road of that psychological evaluation, that's where I found, at the assessment selections, a lot of the hard no's come is when psych says, hey, there are some things here that this is not the teammate that we want.
Right, exactly. And that's, we had that happen here in the past 3 months with a guy who came down for Stowe Pro, didn't make it. Then he tried for the TAC P officer route. And of course, a phone call was made, and they said, basically, look, here it is. And they didn't take him. And that's the thing about being a recruiter that really sucks, is when you have somebody that really, really wants it, you really think they want it, and you have to tell them no. That's probably one of the hardest jobs, is telling somebody when they can't do something.
I can only imagine, because, whether they're set up for it or not, that doesn't take away their effort. It doesn't take away all that they've sacrificed to get to that point. And, to have to hear that at that point, I would have to assume that's tough. That's tough.
Yeah, it is tough. Yeah,
totally.
So, but yeah, I mean, the cross-training assessment, I think our next one, we have one in the spring. I can tell you when the next one's going to be. We have our next one coming up for anybody wanting to cross-train, is going to be starting on 19 April. So if they're wanting to apply for that, they need to start probably getting their ducks in a row now, because they'll usually put a cutoff date about a month prior to that. And if anybody has any questions or hits any kind of resistance while they're trying to do it, just I'd be more than willing to help them out and do what I can for them.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, we really appreciate it. I'm sure they do too. Can you tell us how long the entire, let's say that today I wanted to cross train and I wasn't already a PJ, I was doing some other job. How long does that process take? Because people are always trying to play. They're like, hey, I want to be ready for these assessments and kind of set it up.
The big thing is I got to make sure they're in their window. I don't mean like their retraining window. They got to meet their time on station requirement. So if somebody doesn't meet their 24 months, 12-month time on station requirement, they have to meet that when they're able to apply. If their career field is short manned, we have a memorandum signed by half that basically they can't deny them that retraining opportunity as long as they meet that time on station requirement. So if somebody's want to come out for the spring, they've been at their base 18 months, they should be okay, because by the time they meet retraining assessment, get through, get a spot for ANS, they should be at that window where they'll be able to swap up, cross over. So that's the big thing, is just making sure you're meeting your time on station requirement for these people. It doesn't really matter if you're a first-term airman, second-term airman. One thing I would highly suggest is we're not usually looking for people beyond E5 to cross over, unless they're going for the officer route. One functional told me that they would entertain like a baby tech, baby E6 that wants to cross over. Same applies for sister service as well.
Okay. Yeah, that's great information. That's really, really good. So definitely there's a sweet spot for those dudes. Plus, when you're getting established in those jobs, that was hard for me. I was a senior staff sergeant, so a senior E5 kind of when I went through or kind of got into that realm, and it was easy to be comfortable there. That was the big one for me, is I was an older dude. I was already a 7 level, already trained up in my other job, and looking at that pipeline, looking at that 2 years ahead of me, there were definitely some days I was like, man, life sure was easier on the other side. Yeah,
absolutely.
So for those people that are kind of on the fence either way from the recruiting standpoint, what would your advice be for somebody that's not really sure, not talking about jobs, but just taking that step, kind of just like what I said? Like, what would your advice be to somebody that just isn't sure about what it is that they want to do? And kind of
my advice would be talk to somebody in the career field.
Perfect. Yeah.
Recruiting, as a recruiter, we put recruiting videos out and brochures out and all that stuff, and those are designed to recruit you to come do this. If you want, I would always encourage people to take a base tour, take a tour of an STS or a rescue squadron, and talk to an operator actually doing it, and kind of get a no BS. This is what a day-to-day mission, day is like on team. Whether if you're not doing missions, you're training, or kind of get them in there and exposed to kind of what they're going to see every day, within as much as they can, but talk to those operators, and what you think it may be may not be what it is, Yeah. That's my biggest advice I tell people.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. That's 100% right. And I'll tell you, as the guy that sits in the team room and gets those calls, like, we don't turn people down. If somebody's like, hey, I work over on this side of base and I want to come over and check the unit out and check you guys out, we're like, hey, come on in. Like, come on into the team room.
Right. Yeah, my perception of what these career fields were like is, if I'd have known, 15 years ago what this was like, hell, who knows where I would have wound up, but the dynamic around these guys, no matter what career field it is, you put them together, it's really impressive. And it's probably been my favorite position I've had in the military, just seeing how you guys interact day to day with the family aspect of it and everything. It's really impressive. So anybody that that wants to do this, I would definitely tell them to go out and talk to some of the guys and kind of experience just a sliver of what you guys get to do every day.
Yeah, and that's the biggest thing for me. One of the biggest, benefits or the takeaways is the team, is having those guys that you hit the nail on the head. Like when you get us all together in a room, you would be shocked. It's like nothing else.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
that's really good. I think that's about it. I don't know if you have if you want to, plug some stuff, or we'll definitely get your contact information in the bios, and in the description on the YouTube or on the podcast, show notes and stuff. So we'll get everything in there. Is it okay if people contact you directly if they got?
No, absolutely. I'll give my email and have a distro email I check, daily too. So I want to make sure that if people want to do this, they have the right, accurate POC to get to. And if I'm not the right guy, I'm sure I'll probably the right guy to get him in touch with.
Man, Donovan, that's awesome. I really appreciate your time today. Thanks for coming on with us here at One's Ready, and we're going to get this up as soon as we possibly can, along with that cross training podcast. So again, really appreciate your time, and we'll get everything locked up and put onto the interwebs so that we can get this going.
Awesome, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I really appreciate your time. Thanks for coming on.